Thanks everyone for joining the webinar today. My name's Chris. I'm Business Development Manager here at JTF Marketing, and on the call with me we have Nathan, who is our Head of Consulting, and we are going to go through really quite a hot topic of conversation within marketing operations and Marketo specifically, which is sourcing and attribution. How do we attribute successes throughout the funnel, and how do we improve on both the attribution and the reporting of that. So yeah, as mentioned, my name's Chris. Here at JTF Marketing, we are marketing automation experts. We're a bronze Marketo Engage solution partner, and we're all about living and breathing Marketo. So we really want to try and empower you to drive as much as you can through your automation, do more with the platform, which has been a hot topic of conversation in the conferences I've been in recently, but also kind of embrace that challenge of doing as much as you can with the automation and overcoming any kind of automation challenges that you might have. So yeah, in terms of the topic of the conversation today, sourcing and attribution. So we're going to be looking at different use cases, understanding different measures of attribution, how to understand the Revenue Explorer reports, and a bit of tips for how to successfully set up some of those Revenue Explorers, and there's be a time some Q&A as well. If you do have any questions, please pop them into the Q&A chat box at the bottom. We can get to those at the end. You don't have to wait for us to ask that question. It'd be good to have a few lined up when we get to that point. But otherwise, I'm going to hand over to Nathan, and he's going to really get into the detail of attribution and the use cases of.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Yeah, just to I guess recap on who I am. My name's Nathan Horan. I'm Head of Consulting here at JTF Marketing, and I've been with the business for around 4 months, so relatively new to post. However, really kind of excited to get involved and start to work with some of our clients with some of these key strategic initiatives. And one thing that I always look at when I'm working in a client's instance of Marketo is understanding, okay, how are we actually measuring success in this instance? And always trying to think, okay, let's look at the bigger picture here. You know, we're in a world now where marketing departments are no longer focused purely on top of the funnel lead generation or engagement or brand awareness. There's a key need for marketing departments in this day and age, and we're probably running out of time of where I can kind of justify this. But we're in an age where marketing needs to be able to prove and contribute towards revenue, or at least or influence revenue at the very least. And sourcing and attribution is kind of one of the foundational aspects of proving that, right? So I appreciate this is a very big subject and it's a lot to cover in 30 minutes. So we will do a bit of a whistle-stop tour. But I think for me, it's important to understand is, okay, with sourcing and attribution, there's a lot of technology available out there that can support it. My focus is what's available or what's possible within Marketo, but also with kind of the addition of native CRM, think Marketo Measure, Revenue Explorer, which obviously all of those kind of are outside of the kind of Marketo core platform or the core subscription that you may have. However, we'll kind of walk through some of the use cases to see what you can do with what you've got versus what is possible with additional technology. So just to kind of explain attribution modeling in Marketo, or at least how I see it, and what you may already have available to you, you may be using this to some extent at some point. But if we look at it in terms of a typical sales funnel, if we look at the top of the funnel, we can see kind of, prospect or visitor person may not be known in the database at that point. However, this would then tie to what we call lead source. And there is a field in Marketo called lead source, person source. And the idea of that field is so that we stamp it with the original source of where that person came from. And I say that I emphasize the origin of that record, because that includes anonymous activity, right? So, for example, I go onto your website, I fill out a form, but what the lead source is intended to tell me is not the form or how I became known in the database. It actually tells me how I was driven to the website in the first place. So when we are attributing lead source, we want to look at data points such as UTMs, assuming you have a UTM strategy in place. If not, I recommend you do have one. And then there are other data points available. So there are system fields in Marketo original source, which can also indicate where that lead may have come from through kind of refer a website, etc., etc. This is always one of the kind of key benefits of using Marketo forms, even if it's embedding Marketo forms on your website, because you have greater control when it comes to understanding the lead source, because obviously you can track UTM values through hidden fields in a Marketo form, for example. The kind of next step is kind of that idea of, okay, we want to know where the lead source originally came from, but now we want to know how the lead was created, or in Marketo language, how the lead was converted. So obviously, what is the offering that led that person to become known in our database? You will likely have seen this already, but acquisition program is generally used, and the most common place where you would populate acquisition program is within your triggers in the program itself. So when that record is created, they qualify for a trigger to manage their status in a Marketo program. And if acquisition program is empty, then populate it with that program name. The key element to, I guess, be wary of from a timing perspective is you may have, for example, a program for a paid search campaign, and a person has followed your paid search campaign, they've landed on a content download form, filled out the form, and then you may have a kind of timing discrepancy of, okay, well, actually the lead source is the paid search program, the acquisition program is the content program. So there's a bit of an element of timing and how you approach that. The next is kind of marketing touch points. So one thing that when I work with a lot of clients who've implemented their own kind of, they've implemented their own instance or worked with another agency, is often this is forgotten about. And this is the real purpose behind why we have channels and statuses in Marketo. So marketing touch points, this kind of forms part of Marketo's, I guess, somewhat native multi-touch attribution model, but this is driven by Revenue Explorer. So if you don't have a Revenue Explorer subscription, you'll be limited on the reporting that is available to you for this. However, Marketo programs and channels, each channel, when it's kind of marketing related, excluding things like operational channels, they will have a success status, and every channel has to have a success status. And if you reach that success status, that's considered a successful marketing touch point, and in theory should apply a shared credit for attribution. So if I interact with 7 or 8 different marketing touch points, and then an opportunity is created against me, the idea is that that credit would be shared amongst all those 7 or 8 marketing touch points. One thing that can be done, it's not native in Marketo, but in lieu of having a tool like Revenue Explorer or Marketo Measure, you can leverage kind of last touch reporting, but there are limitations around that I will mention. So it does depend on the model you go for. It's not my favorite model of kind of first and last touch attribution, because it forgets all of those marketing touch points that kind of contribute to the journey up until that point. But if you follow a kind of standard funnel process in Marketo, so obviously using this example of MQL, you can track, okay, what was the last marketing touch before that person became an MQL? And you can use flow steps in a smart campaign to stamp the latest, the latest marketing touch or marketing program touch. And then once that person converts to MQL, you can stamp it into another field to say that was their kind of MQL marketing touch. Generally, first and last touch reporting is better reported on in Salesforce, but I'll kind of walk you through what those use cases look like. So an attribution model, and I'm going to kind of talk through a little bit of theoretical explanation right now. So the attribution model is how you apply credit or how you apportion credit. And so obviously with a first touch model, we focus on that first touch, the lead source, as I mentioned before, and we apply 100% of credit. There may be a use case for this if you are being measured purely based on lead generation, which lead generation channels are actually being the most successful in creating leads in our database. So that kind of first touch attribution. Another kind of form of single touch attribution is that lead creation, so focusing on the acquisition program. What offerings, and that's answering the question of what offerings are actually leading to people becoming known in our database. So actually what's converting people, or what offerings do we have that is leading people to convert. In terms of what is available for single touch attribution, you can report on this within Marketo using standard reports. Perfect example is the people performance report. The people performance report, you are able to enable opportunity columns. I will say the kind of main dependency here is that you're using a native CRM sync and you're actually populating the opportunity object, or it's exposed within Marketo, because that's obviously how you kind of tie back to revenue in Marketo. The people performance report, you can group, for example, by lead source. With lead source, you should always have a limited number of possible lead source values. I generally recommend less than 20, but then that makes your kind of reporting easier to consume, right? Because you can group the people that have been created in your database and group them by lead source, and then you can tie it to kind of opportunities created as well. However, that's not the only place you can report, but obviously if you're using kind of native Marketo, that's kind of a good place to start on your attribution journey. But you can also report on the exact same, assuming that those fields are mapped. You can create Salesforce custom reports. Revenue Explorer can also report on the same, and Marketo Measure, you can actually implement standard attribution models, for example, the single touch model, as I mentioned before. But Marketo Measure can do a lot more of that, more than that. Attribution model for first and last touch. Again, this is very easily stamped within Marketo, as I've mentioned before. But as I said, it's better reported on in CRM, in my opinion. There are limitations around that. So, for example, this is kind of assuming a linear kind of sales funnel. But if you have cashbacks, you would have to make a decision whether you overwrite the fields that you're stamping for last touch. For example, if I go from MQL to SAL, I go back to kind of engaged, and then I re-MQL again. Your attribution model, there's a risk that you're kind of overwriting data points that you've already stamped previously, so it does limit your reporting in that way. There are workarounds around that using kind of custom a custom approach. For example, custom objects in Salesforce or Marketo Measure kind of has something called boomerang stages, but again, that's kind of a more complex implementation outside of what's possible natively within Marketo. Just to explain some of the different attribution models, this is I guess, a bit more of a visual approach to how first touch of multi-touch credit is applied. So the example here is, we have kind of 1, 2, 3, 4 different marketing touch points. But the idea here is when a lead is acquired in a first touch acquisition model, that entire $500 opportunity would be attributed to the first webinar that led them to become known in our database. In a multi-touch model, the idea is that any marketing touch point that has achieved a success would share a proportion, an even proportion of the credit. And this is most commonly how Revenue Explorer, the Revenue Explorer generates reports. So as you can see here, the first kind of registered webinar, that person didn't actually attend the webinar, and the attended webinar is the success status. Therefore, the webinar doesn't actually receive a portion of the credit in the multi-touch model. However, the content download and the kind of number 3 webinar attendance, they were both successes. Therefore, they would both share a $250 proportion of the credit. The reason why number 4 does not receive any credit is because it was a touch point that occurred after the opportunity was opened, after the opportunity was closed. Sorry. As mentioned, multi-touch reporting is best reported on either Revenue Explorer or Marketo Measure, but it can be done using a kind of custom solution in other platforms as well. For example, Salesforce, using the Salesforce custom object. Okay, so I guess for the second half of this session, I'm going to focus on Revenue Explorer. I see that there's a question in the chat, is how can we actually see if we have Revenue Explorer in our subscription? And so you would need to have the Revenue Cycle Analytics subscription from Marketo. If you go to My Marketo, you will see a tile that is labeled Revenue Explorer. Unfortunately, I'm not logged into an instance of Marketo in order to show you that, but you would see a tile next to Marketing Activities, Design Studio, Database. You would see a Revenue Explorer option there if it's part of your subscription. So within the Revenue Explorer, there are 9 main report types. And I'll just very high level explain what each of these are. So email analysis reports, so they focus on metrics and attributes that are related to emails that are sent out from your instance. So with an email analysis report, you can recreate some of the standard reporting that you're probably already well aware of: email performance report, email click performance report, email link performance report, sorry. So you can recreate a lot of that reporting within Revenue Explorer, but obviously with the additional benefit of the customization that is available within Revenue Explorer. You can slice and dice based on tags, based on custom fields, etc., etc. Lead analysis report. So this is focused on kind of metrics and attributes associated with the person or the lead or contact, as well as company metrics and attributes, but it's tied back to the kind of people in the database. But again, you can recreate some of the standard reports that are available, but you can then heavily customize. Revenue Explorer is an advanced report builder. Model performance analysis. There's 2 types, and obviously the difference is that they have a different emphasis, one by company, one by leads. But these are metrics and attributes focused on your revenue cycle model. So if you want to use one of these reports, you need to have an active revenue model in your instance. So these are really good for kind of model stage reporting, velocity reporting on kind of how quickly people move through your funnel. And they use the revenue model in order to kind of identify the stages and the transitions for that. So it can be a really powerful element of the Revenue Explorer capability. Opportunity analysis, looking again at the person or the company, but how they relate to opportunities from CRM. Again, this is on the assumption that opportunities are synced with your Marketo instance. But you can then start to, and this is where you would start to look at kind of attribution reporting. So how a person, looking at revenue generated by lead source, revenue generated by lead acquisition program, revenue generated by channel, etc., etc. Then we have program cost analysis. So obviously start to think about return on investment. This will provide metrics and attributes, but it's only for programs where there's at least one period cost or cost period. I always say when building your programs, always include a period cost, even if it's 0. There are settings at the kind of admin channels level where you can include reports, programs in You can include programs in your reporting regardless of whether there's a period cost or not. However, I always say when you're building a program, just include a period cost, even if it's 0, because it's good practice and it ensures that they are then available in your Revenue Explorer. Program membership analysis. One thing to mention, obviously, program needs to have members in order to appear in Revenue Explorer, but any kind of program-related metrics and attributes. Program opportunity, metrics and opportunity attributes as they relate to programs. And then finally, the program revenue stage analysis. So again, tying programs to your active revenue cycle model or models if you have more than one. So if you are using Revenue Explorer, some, I guess, tips to kind of make sure that you're set up for success. This is one of the most common things. People subscribe to the Revenue Explorer, they start paying for it, and then they never use it, right? In order to kind of make the most, these are, I guess, some of the prerequisites that you need. Setting relevant channel tags analytics behavior. So that's what I mentioned in the channel admin setup. Making sure that any channels are excluded if they are not relevant for reporting, for example, operational channels. So anything that is non-operational, ensure that they are kind of inclusive regardless of period cost, so that they can be included. However, my recommendation to include period cost in every program still stands. Statuses and success statuses should be in line with Marketo best practices. Obviously, this is to ensure that we are applying credit where it's a successful interaction, and that may not be every single marketing interaction. We want to focus on the successes because that's where the attribution should really lie. Again, Marketo best practices. I've seen channels set up in lots of different ways for different clients, but we are generally saying per channel, there should be a standardized set of successes based on that person's progression or level of interaction with that journey. For example, if I attend a webinar, my successes would typically be attended or attended on demand. Tags, use them. Tags, again, these are kind of set at the admin level next to channels. And they are what you would then leverage in Revenue Explorer reports to slice and dice your report. So if I want to see very quickly how my EMEA region is performing on lead generation, I can use tags set at the program level, requires process in order to do that. But then it means my kind of top level reporting or holistic reporting in Revenue Explorer is easy and functional to use. I mentioned this about 10 times, so I won't repeat it. Assign period costs where relevant. But I always recommend within RCE, it's worth mentioning, it is not limited by workspace. So if you use workspace and partitions within your instance, be aware that Revenue Explorer does not adhere to the same structure as your workspaces. So I always recommend to have a simple and a disciplined folder structure. Obviously, it just maintains good use of the tool if it's easier for multiple users to navigate. One thing that's often forgotten, I always recommend to create starter reports. So assuming you follow best practices and have program templates in marketing activities, I always recommend the same in Revenue Explorer. Create report templates that people can clone and then customize. It gets people started on, okay, I want to analyze this. This is the closest use case. And then I'm going to clone it and kind of tweak it based on my specific requirements. I think that's always helpful. And it's something that, my team are often leaned upon working with clients, is standing up some of those starter reports based on kind of industry best practice or our experience around that. So if you're unsure of where to start, of course, then lean on consultants at JTF. Always worth mentioning, RCE is not working real time. Its data model is that Marketo pushes over data every 24 hours. So I always recommend don't drive yourself mad by comparing standard reports with RCE. The data model is a bit different as well, which I'll cover later in this call. So very quickly brush through the next couple of slides, but one of the more powerful things with RCE is that you can enable custom fields in your report. So that obviously will allow you to really customize your reports even further outside of standardized reports in Marketo. One common use case, if you do have person partitions in your instance, you can write the person partition to a custom field and then use that custom field to kind of slice and dice your report. It's very simple to do. I won't walk through what those steps are, but essentially you can enable any custom field that you have available to you. And it's just a couple of steps, but there's lots of documentation on how to do that. I will whiz through a couple of report examples. As you can see here, with an email analysis report, you can recreate a lot of the same metrics that you get in a standard email performance report in the Marketo UI. However, you can really customize it. For example, looking at sent week, comparing sent week, grouping the emails in various columns, looking at it at a more holistic level by channel. So there's a lot of customary approach. One thing that I always get asked is around soft bounces. You won't have a field for soft bounces. However, you can create a custom measure which does the exact same thing. It basically deducts hard bounces from versus delivered numbers. Lead analysis walkthrough, worth mentioning the metrics and the attributes that are available to you change based on the report type. So the kind of top level kind of metrics that you can drag into your kind of x-axis. You can also create a table view or a chart view, depending on how your report's been built, whether that is usable or not. But again, there's lots of ways that you can really customize this in Revenue Explorer. I'm just conscious of time, so we've only got a couple of minutes left, and I do want to get to questions. Model performance analysis. Here, you can start to look at an active revenue model, look at the stages, how many people are in each stage, what's the velocity of people moving through each stage. There's lots of different use cases behind these reports. As I say, it's very customizable. And the last thing is you can embed multiple reports into dashboards as well. So kind of example here is a marketing operations dashboard. There might be lots of things. Okay, I'm a marketing ops person. I want to know who's not got the lead source because that's going to F up my attribution. Who's not got an acquisition program? That's going to mess up my attribution. Who's creating programs but not assigning success statuses? So this is a very good kind of marketing operations dashboard, a report that you could work on a weekly basis and create actions off the back of it, right? I'll share these slides afterwards with some of the FAQs, but I always say is don't try to report standard reporting in Marketo versus RCE. The data model is different. There's usually a reason behind why you're seeing slightly different numbers. And there's also that 24-hour delay in the sync as well, whereas standard reports in Marketo are generally real time. Okay. Obviously, if you want to understand more about how to measure return on investment and kind of really leverage Marketo reporting, there's a QR code. Chris, I'll let you jump in. But obviously, what are the best practice methods? What can I do? You can scan that QR code to get further help.
Yeah, scan away if you need any further support, or if you've got any specific use cases which you need help with. Obviously, we're here to help. Just let us know. I know that Nathan really wants to get onto the questions, and we've got a couple of good ones in there. So I'd say first one, let's go for what do you suggest when there are no true period costs? How do you set it up so you can at least see the report, and is there a good benchmark to use?
Yeah, the benchmark is 0. So you can still put a value of 0 cost, but as long as you're putting that period cost in, it should appear in your reports.
Cool. What is your best preferred attribution model in the market? We're going to be a little bit biased here right now for a B2B company. And I think we already touched on that as part of the presentation, but I'm going to let you follow.
Preferred attribution model or preferred tool? Or?
preferred tool, essentially, like a platform, multi-attribution platform. So there's a couple of examples provided in the questions, but Marketo Measure being
yeah. I mean, I can't say that I've experienced every kind of tool that's on the market. I can kind of speak from my experience, but again, it's tied to what question you're trying to answer with attribution and how custom that you need it, right? So the kind of going back to the use cases that I mentioned. So if you want a pure multi-touch attribution model with shared credit based on a successful interaction, the Revenue Explorer is fine. If you want to have a more custom model where you want to apply weightings based on various stages, then I would think about something like Visible, or it's as it's now called, Marketo Measure. So again, it depends on the use case and how custom that you want it to be.
Go on and sneak one more in. How would you get started on a UTM strategy if you don't have anything in place to start with? So that was where a question from one of the earlier points was, you recommend having that UTM strategy in place. What would you say is your best first touch point?
Yeah, I think one is to understand what is actually driving traffic to your website. And I mean, you'll find lots of templates online. Google is your friend on that one. You'll have a really good starter template, but the idea is create a link builder for a UTM and then define the value. So what is actually driving traffic to your website? I won't have time to go into what is UTM source, what is UTM medium, but there's lots of help online of the definitions around that. But get yourself started with a template and then apply your business context to that template. Where is actually traffic coming from? Are there any kind of nuances for your business?
Yeah, absolutely. Lovely. We've run over a little bit, but this is as Nathan mentioned, this is a big old topic. We've covered some fantastic information there. As Nathan said, there's the slides are going to be there in the on demand. So if you want to go through it again at your own pace, please feel free to review. Obviously, we've got the QR code on screen as well. So if you've got any further questions, that's the place for you to get some further support. Otherwise, thanks for sticking with us beyond the time. We've still got quite a few attendees hanging on. It's been great to have you with us. Thank you very much. If Nathan he looks like he wants to say one more thing before we.
Yeah, just that when you leave the call, you'll be prompted to fill in a survey within Zoom. So obviously, we greatly appreciate if you could share some feedback at the end of this call as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Yeah, look out for our next webinar. We'll see you again soon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye now.
Bye.